Welcome to SA Rugby's Alliance Series preview to the second test in Cape Town. The Lions are 1-0 up. That's brought to you by Betway. And as always, joined by the Welsh and the British and Irish legends. 3 tours, 50 matches, 5 tests. Scott Gibbs, player of the series in 1997. So many parallels. 97 to 2021. You said it earlier in the week. The Lions win. It's their series, obviously. You don't think it could go to a third one if they lose. For them, the Springboks have to win. The third one becomes fairly meaningless. And we've seen that in 2009. We saw that in 1997. The team that won the series took a bit of a beating in that third test. Boys were on the charge for that week. What do you make of the two team selections? 3 changes each. We'll start with the Lions.
Yeah, well, I think that I think there were bold changes, and they had to be made by Gatland, given that the performance was very strong and to some degree relatively complete in the context that it was a win. But there were some concerns for me on the perimeter and the back three. At points in the game, there didn't seem to be too much communication, and I think that led to confusion, and that confusion led to opportunities for the Boks. And so my initial appraisal is the 3 changes I welcome, but I thought he may have just gone a little bit deeper into the squad, and I say that because I didn't think Hogg was so dominant at fullback in his presence that he kind of warranted to be, still in the start in 15, because I thought, given what we saw last week, Liam Williams would have been a perfect candidate to be there, right in the middle, diffusing those bombs, because the kicking game is still going to be relevant and prevalent for the Boks.
If you look at 22-17, when 19-17, 2 minutes to go, it's happy days for the Lions. They've won the test. They lose that test 18-17. The dynamic of that 77-minute performance up until that point becomes very different. Then we may have seen more than 3 changes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it becomes more irrelevant, because then you literally look at what are the takeaways from that game. Yes, incredible, massive performances by Laws and Itoje, but expect more from lots of other senior players. And then you look at the dynamic at 9, 10, 12, 13. You certainly look at the shift at 11, 14 and 15, and then suddenly becomes 6 changes, wholesale changes that I think could have been justified for this game, given the importance of there is no tomorrow. You can't look beyond Saturday for this to be equaled out, because for the Lions it is all about closing this game, and I think his selection is based on closing. Let's close this out.
Well, his selection is for a World Cup final, and whoever is going to play in that third test, it's a third and fourth player. Because he said in the media conferences earlier in the week, there will be guaranteed big changes for the third test, whether we win or lose this test. So what message does that send to the blokes who say if they come out and they lose on Saturday, where's their opportunity for redemption?
Well, there is no redemption. This is the significance of what Saturday is. You cannot leave anything out on the field, and you haven't the opportunity to really micromanage and look at the minutiae of where things went right and where things went wrong last Saturday, because no 2 test matches are the same. Yes, the squads are principally the same, but the dynamic is going to shift, because the Lions, whilst they appreciate that they will still have to continue to play, and the inclusion of Harris is a positive for me, because it brings in production and certainly a far more defensive alignment in that black line, which is going to be needed, because the other side of the field, if you look at the back line on paper, Faf, Pollard, Delende, look at the back three. It is a beautifully balanced backline, but it hasn't been given the mandate to express itself. So you expect more of that on Saturday, which means obviously a lot more, straight line. Let's get over the gain line to get our team into play. But also we need to see some deception to get, Mapipi and Cheslin Colby opportunities for one-on-one presence where we know they can be devastating. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't make sense. This is like having a Bentley GT V8 on your driveway. It looks very smart, but it needs to be driven, and this back line needs to be impactful in the game. as important or even more important than the carrying presence of the Bok front five, which for the first 20 minutes has to stamp its mark on the game.
Well, if I look at the game, I've watched it twice, and I go back to the World Cup semi-final against Wales, which in many respects for me was the final. It was the one they had to beat. It was the team that they were the most guarded of, obviously outside of the All Blacks, was Wales, who had the wood on them. It came down to 16 all with 3 minutes to go, and Pollard kicked that brilliant penalty. But it could have been Wales who had won that final. It was Gatland's coaching, it was the way Wales played. Would you say it could be close to the mark that they put too much emphasis on a Gatland Wales being a Gatland Lions, and they tried to play that similar game, yet when they played England in the final, they used that Bentley. They used the Rolls Royce at the back, and you've got 7 English players in that 50 now. Yes, coached by Gatland. The way to beat this Lions team is to try and replicate what they did in that World Cup final, not what they did in the semi-final against Wales.
No, that's right, and I think it's quite easy to get into that kind of false sense of security. That yes, the magnitude of this game is huge for both sides. Yeah, the Lions win, they take the series. The Boks obviously need and are searching for a win, but they're searching for a shape. They need to build themselves. They need to create a platform. They need to build a game. They can't go out there obviously from the start and maybe rely too heavily on their kicking game to create, pressure and territory and really squeeze the Lions, because I think the Lions just have too much talent in that team, and they have the ability to absorb it physiologically as well, because the Lions will look at it and say, listen, if it's 60, 70 minutes on the clock and this is a tight game, we're going to back ourselves to kind of to win this game, because we just probably have a little bit more togetherness. Whereas everyone keeps telling me here in South Africa, there is no plan B for the Boks, and I dismiss that. But you have to empower the whole team, not to play this kind of open, expansive game, but you have to play it with a level of measure and a level of fortitude that is just too hot to handle for the Lions.
Well, if you go back to, and those things were said about the Boks in the build-up to the final against England, stop them up front and you beat them. Wales just came within 3 minutes of doing that. They don't have a plan B. Within the first 10 minutes of that test, they'd shifted the ball to the left, they'd shifted it to the right, they'd created space for both Mpimpi and for Colby, and they immediately put down a marker. 1, we can scrum you, but 2, we can also play.
Yeah,
I'm expecting a lot more of that this weekend when I look at the kind of changes they've made. But just chatting to people within the squad and that, they have to go that way, but they're not going to die wondering. I mean, they try the same approach that they did in the first test. They overkick it. The Lions will come up with a 5-point win again because they have too much in that 23, and they also have a superior conditioning based on 8th game of the tour. These guys are only into their 3rd game. Yeah. As much as we say it's not a factor, it is a factor. So the Boks have got to know that they're going to be on the road for the last 20 minutes. It's what kind of scoreboard pressure they've built to defend when they're on the ropes, as they did in that SAA game. They just had enough to hold out in the end. They didn't have... The 12-3 should have been a 19-3 to potentially get them over the line on Saturday.
And the fabric of that scoreline is totally different. I think one of the key components for the Boks is you have to remove ego. You have to remove this whatever is inherent within the jersey and the Springboks about we have to dominate, we have to overpower. Yes, you have to do those things, but it has to be considered. It has to be measured. You have to look at the 23 and go deep in this 23 from a Boks perspective. So the reliance is more on use of ball, and creating pressure, which creates opportunity. Because if it is going to be hear 'em, scare 'em type stuff, and you want to go out and bully the opposition, you are going to come up short. So there has to be a bit more disguise, a little bit more guile, and that's why Faf and Pollard have to have their best game in a Boks jersey, because they are key to unlocking the talent in the back line and also measuring who gets opportunity inside, outside on these short runners. That really does put pressure on say Biggar plays, because there may be a question whether Biggar doesn't start, because he still has to go through another protocol and has to be cleared by the concussion consultant. So, and I'm led to believe that he doesn't practice till Thursday. So there could be a late change in that, but that doesn't change the fact that I think the Boks have to be very, very astute at targeting 9, 10 and 12. They have to keep those lines short, these 1 metre passes, get this quick over the ball, 3 metre ruck, quick ball, and then you've got this, as you said, you can extrapolate all the virtues and values of the back three and those guys that have been so far superior in the 15 metre channel. So it is all to play for, but the nuances have to be seen and felt Saturday from a Bok perspective, because if it's going to be just crash bang wall up, I think you might just come up against a brick wall, given the significance of we got more in the tank and we will level you. So there has to be a little bit more of that considered thought and calmness about use of ball.
And rugby intelligence, because we all talk about the physicality of the game. But the physical dominance is not at the set piece in terms of the scrum or the mauling, it's in the collisions.
Yeah.
And not in necessarily the defensive collisions, and that's what you keep on saying, going back to why weren't you seeing a Peter Steph Totoy and Eben Etzebeth, the big runners, running at 10, running at 12, force him to make tackles. If I look at the balance of the Bok Lustria with Jasper Wiese coming in at 8, he gives him that physicality and allows here to play more to the ball, and they've often started on the bench, which you've also got an out-and-out fetcher, a forager of the ball to slow the Lions' ball down, because you don't want the Lions, like the All Blacks, to get quick ball. They've got outstanding backs. But for me, when I look at it, that physicality has to come with the rugby intelligence and their approach. It's not just smashing them at the first kick-off, scrumming them back to the UK. It's basically controlling the game, controlling your emotions, and giving Pollard the quality ball to play territory. And from territory, potentially forcing the pressures, because that's when the line-out comes into play. The Lions were incredibly disciplined in that first test, refused to kick the ball out. We weren't disciplined enough or effective enough in the collisions to force those penalties. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's right on the money, Mark. Is that you can't win this collision or the battle of the gain line, running in singles. You have to hunt in pairs, even in small little pods, because that's where your game is. And I mean, let's be honest. Peter Steph Totoy was an inch away from retrieving that PP kind of dribble ball through, and his momentum would have got him over the try line. And I mean, when you look at that from an attacking perspective, he outpaced his number there, Tom Curry. He had the measure of him. So we all know that this guy is phenomenal out on the wide, and I just don't want to see him get caught up in this battle of the middle 30, because I think his benefit is support in the midfield and outside backs on the second and third phase, because that's where he's dangerous, because he can get in and out the tackles with his long reaching arms and such. So you're right. I think Rassi and the coaching team need to empower them to be smart, use the ball, quick ball. But it has to be measured with the level of clarity that you have in the top 3 inches, because this is a big test match. Pressure is going to be relevant on both sides, and it's how any athlete reacts under pressure.
What would the message this whole week within the Lions camp, within that 23, from Gatlin, Wyn Jones and the coaches, and it's exactly that same situation you guys were in 97, what would the reinforcement be to the squad the whole week?
Well, I think it will be one of belief. Look around and see Alan Wyn Jones. Look at the performance we saw. Courtney Lawes, Mario Itoje. They got to back it up. But also other players will say, "Listen, I know I need to elevate my performance, my level of play," but all with a cohesion and understanding that tactics may change, and we might see more from the Lions in the opening 20 on Saturday that would be akin to the first half we saw from the Boks, where we'd be totally dominant on the aerial battle down the tram lines, never to the corners, just to see if they can put pressure on the back three and tackle the turnover, because they're certainly going to know that it's just not going to happen on Saturday, and we can't just defend ourselves a win like we did in '97. They're going to have to go out and play.
What did you see in the Bok first test performance that they can improve on for the second test? And when it comes to individuals and the combinations that the Lions would be up on the chart. They would be saying, that's an area, that's a player, that's a combination, and we've got to nullify them. Who would you feel they've been identifying?
So if we look at the kind of opening 20, opening 40 salvo from the first test, as a former context of what they should be looking at, I think more pressure on Faf. Definitely more pressure on Faf from a kicking perspective. If Faf does kind of kick in that same vein, I think it was nearly 12 kicks in that first half or so. They're gonna make sure that they want to disrupt any of the the front five carrying the ball, and how they do that, is that going to come off 9? Is it going to come off 10? I'd rather see that happen from a Bok perspective, more into the midfield, just to fatigue and tire and just be relentless at running at 10, 12, 13. Which let's face it, they're going to be softer targets than running at Manu Itoje and Alun Wyn Jones. So again, you have this level of production that fatigues the midfield, and once the midfield gets kind of tired, in defence, everything gets narrower. Which clears space on the 15-metre channel and 5-metre channel. Which again, with Pollard, if he has that opportunity with quick ball, can then throw those nice lateral balls, and we can see guys on the arc, because I still feel there's more out and out kind of gas and footwork in the Bok back three than there is in the defensive orientation of the Lions. So they would be two key aspects for me. But all semantics, isn't it? We can guess. We had all this guessing go in the early shows, but it is about level of application. It's about kind of grace under pressure, being very, very calm and measured under pressure, as to how we balance the kick-in territory game, which kind of creates pressure, which creates opportunity, and how we balance the fact is, do we need to play a little bit more rugby, or how do we kind of dim it down a bit? But certainly the dial has to, from an energy perspective, I think the Boks have to kind of blow their tank first half. They have to really go out and whilst that may not reflect in a dominant scorecard at halftime, I just think that it may be just enough pressure after probing that they will see cracks that they can kind of exploit it later on in the second half.
And to put some doubt in the Lions. There are the momentum, the belief is there at the moment. You speak to the great players who played in respective positions, especially the outside backs. And when there's ever a winner on a winner situation, they've always told me, I want to have a run at him early on, and it sets the tone for the match. Surely that would be a big thing of the Boks, Nienaber and Rassie, to say, let's try and get Colby into space to have a run at Van der Merwe. Let's see if he can dazzle him with a feed. If he gets tossed into the stands, well, we kind of know that defensively he's got his measure, and his head is switched on. But Colby never got that opportunity. He beats Van der Merwe once it impacts on his game, doesn't it? Defensively, he starts looking up at the high ball. He starts doubting his thing. So it comes back to what you were saying right in the beginning. Let's see those outside backs play a bit.
Mark, there's clearly a system that has been adopted for several years by the Boks. Whether you like it or not, in best part, it is effective, and it does work later on in the game. But you have to be so mindful that whatever the opening 20 and 40 looks like, and if it is what we expect it to be, in the sense that we want to, the Boks need to get across the game line, where do they do that? Do they do it on the fringes, or do they do it in the midfield by putting those bigger runners off 9, of 10 and 12? Let's wait and see. But it's there. Note without prudence. If you've got Stardust on your field and you can't get him involved into the game, then it is sacrilege. Now, we know that the Lions are not inadvertently going to kick to Colby, so he has to create his own opportunity or create his own luck. And that's why I mean that we need to see more disguise from Pollard with 12 and 13, with both wingers coming offline and trying to look busy in the midfield, just as just to maybe cause some distraction to the likes of 12 and 13, who kind of see it's not going to be up and down here. There's a lot of players, there's a lot of movement. Now, that doesn't take a lot of skill. That just takes a lot of organisation, and perfect practice makes perfect. And I think Pollard is very, very dangerous, as is Faf, when they get quicker than usual ball and they're able to run offline. Because once they run offline, they start to get eyes from the defence. And when you are lining up and you kind of in this convention of like, I'm going to cover 1, 2, 3 positions, but as soon as they start running offline, they catch your eye. What happens is you kind of creep a little bit, your feet turn in a little bit, and it creates massive opportunity out in that 15-metre channel. So that is what their tactics should be, is to kind of shift the 10, 12, 13 dynamic from being shoulders and feet, looking out at the outside backs, to maybe creeping in, because that's where they can create opportunity, and that's where someone like Colby is going to be a massive threat. And then it is simply, well, he's on the field, we have to use him. And how do we get him into the game? Because if there is no opportunity being created for him, then he becomes kind of obsolete in that position, because he doesn't bring anything. Because you kind of need to know that everybody's got to share the workload on Saturday, and it's not going. You can't just rely on the front five to get quick ball. You have to move people out of the way and say, listen, I'm fit, I'm fresh, give me an opportunity.
We're going to get to the outcomes just now before we wrap it up. How do the Boks win it, and how do the Lions win it?
So I think for the Boks to win this, it's going to be an enormous effort, but well within their capabilities. But as I said, they've got to use their street smarts. They've got to use everything in their experience to understand how to win this. So my 10 penneth worth would be you measure the kicking game from Faf, and you identify when it's right to kick and when you get some width on it, because Pollard needs to be more vocal in that, and also Villy, because they're the eyes. They'll see opportunities on the left and right wiper space. So that would be the first thing. But I think from the kickoff, you have to see all the artillery getting a touch, and that means Visa needs to roll his sleeves up and be present and be productive. I would like to see Peter Steph-Toy kind of camped out at that outside centre position, really as a threat, because I think he's got great ball skills and has pace to burn. And then I think the production and it just has to up a level or two with Mostert and that's that, on the basis that they'll be a little bit pissed off last week that Maro Itoje came out with the with all the spoils, and they'll be wanting to put an imprint back on him and others. But leadership is key, and whether you turn to Khaleesi as captain, but I think leadership to win this game, I think, is going to come from Pollard and Faf. Really is, and the way that they get their team into the game, stay in the game, and finish stronger.
Looking at the Lions.
Well, I think the fact that Conor Murray comes in for Ali Price is a demonstration that Gatland knows that they perhaps want to play a more structured, solid game, tempered with obviously their innate ability to want to play, because that's not something that's is going to go away anytime soon, because we've seen that from game one, is that when the opportunity arises, they kind of want to put width in it. They want to get numbers on the ball. So I feel that the Boks will probably target Courtney Laws in the line-out. So whether we see less off the top ball and more tailor line-out, catch and drive type of mentality, and then start to use the likes of Henshaw on a lateral from number 9 to 12, or from number 9 to 12 and 13, to see them crash into the midfield, and then look at what opportunities prevail on the outside. But I think the game for the Lions is going to be won in the air, and if they And if they're defensively sound on Saturday, I think that goes a long, defensively sound in the air on the periphery, I think that goes a long way to demonstrate who's going to win this game, because I think whether Biggar starts or whether Farrell comes in and it's the usual suspect, the same relevance lies at their feet, 9 and 10 for the Lions, is use of ball, control of pressure and possession, and when mistakes happen, we've got to convert them. So I think it's still going to be a very tight affair, and the Lions will be comfortable, neck and neck at the 60-minute mark, whereas I don't think the Boks will be too comfortable. They're going to want to see some separation in the scoreboard, not only at halftime but later on in the game, and if there's a side to be chasing the game with 5 minutes to go, I'd still back the Lions to come out on top.
You're confident the Lions will win the series?
I am. I've been relatively confident from the start. This is a smart bunch too. There's been a lot of good performances. Last week we saw the real mettle of some of the, some of the players. I think there's more to come. But I don't think it's let's go out there and hit a home run. You got to build in innings, and I think they'll be strong. They'll be settled, and I think at the end of it, that they'll just have enough to win it. But who knows what type of test match we're going to get, Mark? Because you and I seen enough test series and test matches to understand that this potentially could be a real close affair, but this could be a very open test match, because if the Boks want to express themselves and they see gain in doing that, then they could run this Lions team all around the park. And equally, the balance in the midfield may not work for the Lions, or it may just be the right selection. And I do think it's more tending towards the right selection that Chris Harris has been. He's been superb on this tour and deserves this opportunity. And what better way to debut than picking up a man of the match performance? And I see him being very significant, playing a very significant role in this outcome on Saturday.
2 years ago we chatted, and you said 2009, that second test at Loftus in Pretoria, one of the great tests that you watched. The physicality, the drama, the closeness, it could have gone either way. And back then, you said, I tell you now that second test in Cape Town, because the original schedule had the second test in Cape Town, will be as Richter scale. Yeah. We're here now. Do you believe it will match? There won't be the crowds there, but it will match the intensity and just the drama of what we saw in Pretoria in 2009.
Well, I think it's hard to replicate the drama of that occasion, but cheapest, the Lions players put everything on the line, and some of them got properly banged up, didn't they? And were replaced. There was some imperious performance by Springbok legends, Jacques Fourie and Brian Abana. Come on, that was a game to be at in Pretoria. This weekend, no crowds in this beautiful Cape Town stadium. Who knows what this weather is going to do? The pitch doesn't seem to be as firm as both teams would like to express themselves on a optimum speed level. So it is going to be one of those kind of, it's going to be a fight. There's no doubt about that. But I think it's usable. If I was to look at the key of anything, the intensity is going to be there for both sides, not a problem. Both sides are going to be sound defensively, and it is going to be the game breakers. It's going to be the Colbys on the Anthony Watsons of the game that can really unlock the defences. But I go back to my early assertion that I think the key are both halfbacks this weekend. It's their use of ball, it's their game control, it's their control of the clock, the pressure, and there's their ability to close it out.
Score?
Well, we've both been kind of erring on the side of more points and more tries because we'd like to see it in that. I'd like to think, but I think maybe have to temper my enthusiasm because I know how big these occasions are, and I know what the build-up is like. So I'm going to go more on the kind of Lions 27, Box 25. I think literally it could be a kick in it.
All right, 27-25. Scotty calling it a bit closer than he did last week. He felt there'd be more in it, and he was right at the end. I had the Box to win last week, 25-22. The Lions got the 22. The Box didn't get the 25. I also have them to come back. They simply have to and win this second test and set up the most incredible decider. I also have it though, just by one score.